Hello everyone and welcome to the next episode of Net Cafe with Simon. So in this episode I'm very excited to bring yet another very crucial topic for the DevOps or Linux admin topic, which is bash scripting. And I thought maybe we can go through the most commonly used bash programs that you might be asked to write in your work environment. So as you probably know, bash scripting is a very powerful tool that can really streamline and automate a lot of tasks, and this is a very daily tool that you might use, that you will probably use as in the DevOps, IT or cloud engineer position. I will share with you 5 very practical skills that you probably will use, and I will of course introduce you to the code and why this specific code was written to achieve this specific goals. So if you find this type of things interested, let's go. Hi and welcome to Net Cafe. In this channel we talk about the DevOps, cloud, networking and cybersecurity. So if you're interested in this type of topics, consider subscribing. And now let's jump to the bash scripting. Thanks. Backup script. So one of the first and really the most foundational scripts that you might be asked to write is the backup script of your home folder. So in order to do that, we need to start with the header, with the shebang. So that will really specify that the script will be executed using the bash shell. I will start with the small comment explaining what the script will do. I will start with the variables. The first variable really captures the current date and the time in the format of year, month, day, and hour and a minute, and this really ensures that the backup file has a unique name and really avoids the overwrites. Now I'm also going to define the destination of our backup file, and so the one where we are going copy to, and the source directory, which is the folder that we'll be copying. And here I'm just going to use the $home variable that really defines the specific folder I want to copy. So just in case that the backups folder doesn't exist, we wouldn't like to get any error on that, so I'm going to create the folder, for that I'm going to use the destination dir variable. To create the backup, I'm going to use tar command, which is used in bash scripting to archiving the files with 4 different switches, which is C, Z, V and F. C really creates a new archive, Z compress using a gzip protocol, V for the verbose list of all the files that are going to be archived, and F specified the output file name, which is something that I'm going to do right now. And our archive is named home backup and the timestamp tar gz, and that will be saved in our destination folder. And then also have a -c, which really switches the source of the directory and includes all the files in it. Just to confirm the operation was successful, we are going to print the message that our backup was successfully created, and we are just going to specify the location in our echo message. And that's it. I'm saving the file, I'm leaving it. Now I'm just going to change mode it +X on the backup, and now we can run it. We can see that we can see the list of the files, and we have the message that we also had in our script, which is the backup of our home vagrant was completed and this specific path. Great. Script number 2, server monitoring tool. So as a second tool, I wrote a very basic monitoring tool used in DevOps to check system CPU load, memory usage and disk space. It also generates the alarm if any of these metrics exceed at a predefined threshold that I set in the threshold variable. Let's break it down. So I'm starting my script with the quick comment that will describe what is the purpose of the script. I'm defining the first variable, which is threshold. So this one I'm setting to 80. So any metric that will exceed this value will trigger an alarm. I will first going to get the values of the CPU load, memory usage and the disk space. I will start with the CPU load. To do that, to get the value of the current CPU load, I'm going to use the top command, which with two switches. The purpose of the -b means that the output of the information is directly to the terminal in the static and non-interactive way. And the second one is the -n1, which really specifies the number of the iterations that top should execute before it exits. So in other words, I'm just telling top to run once and freeze the panel or freeze the output of the top, which is the interactive command. And then once I already have that, I'm just going to grab the content of the command with CPU, and now once I have the lines with the CPU, I'm just going to cut the exact number that I want with AWK, which is also very popular stream editor in Linux. And now I'm going to pass that to echo statement. The second variable, the second value that I would like to get is the memory usage. So for that, I'm going to put the new variable called memory, and then I'm just going to use free and AWK to filter the free output and get the specific value of the current memory usage. I tweak AWK a bit and multiply the output by 100 so we can see the value of the memory as a percentage, and then I will format the results to 2 decimal place. Last but not least, I would like to display the space usage in the human readable format. So for that, I'm just going to start the new variable called disk. So this value will store the current disk usage. To get the value, I will use the output of df-h, and then again, just like in the previous example, I will use AWK a set to trim the output of AWK and just get this specific number of the current disk usage. Last but not least, now I'm just going to create a quick alert if any of the metric will exceed the 80% threshold that we defined at the very beginning. So to do that, I'm going to use the conditions to notify me if one of the metrics will exceed 80%, print this specific alarm. So to do that, I'm just going to write if, and now all the three variables, which is the CPU load, memory, disk. In each of these conditions, it is verify whether the value is higher than threshold. If the value is higher than threshold, then of course we would like to print the message. Then we will echo the alarm. One of the metrics is above the threshold value. So that means that user need to do some actions, either, I don't know, kill some processes to lower the CPU, clean up some files on the disk in case the disk is full. So now what we are going to do, the last thing that we're supposed to do is simply just to run the script and to verify that it is working just fine. So I'm just going to run the script, and we can see that none of the three values really exceed the 80%, so we don't see the alarm, but we have nicely formatted CPU load, memory usage, and disk usage, which reflects the current state of our server. Script number 3, security audit. So this script will perform a very basic security audit of our Linux system, and that is designed to help DevOps teams identify potential security vulnerabilities quickly. I will start with the intro message that will indicate for the user where the security audit really starts. So I'm just going to type echo and the message. So this is really a simple introductory banner. Following that, I will now write the script that will indicate what is the status of our firewall on our Linux. So for that, I'm just going to call the command, which is the UFW, that stands for uncomplicated firewall, with the status. So this type of firewall is commonly used on Ubuntu system. Then in case the uncomplicated firewall is not used, I'm also going to call for the check of displaying the IP table rules that is also responsible for managing network traffic at the lower level. This really ensures that the firewall is active and configured correctly to block any unauthorized access. We of course need to write the command with the sudo. So this command with grep is used to process the SSH configuration file and filter its content. The file that is of course in the etc SSH folder is called sshd config file. So with this -v, I'm going to invert the match. That means I will exclude the lines that match the pattern with the hash, so I don't want to see any comments, and of course all the commented lines, and of course I also want to filter out all the lines in the files that are empty. So here I'm also using the second part of the command. I'm also using the -v that exclude the empty lines. Point number 3, which is the check for the package updates. Here we are going to run two commands, which is the sudo apt update and sudo list upgradable. So first one will really update the package repository index, because we really would like to have the newest packages that are available installed on our systems. And then I would also like to list the packages that have newer versions that are available for the installation. So this really ensures that the system is up to date with the latest security patches, updates, and that will of course again reduce the risk of exploitation via known vulnerabilities. Moving on now, I would like to also check for the open listening ports. So for that, I'm going to use the command ss with the 4 different switches. So the ss really displays the listening port together along with the protocols, TCP, UDP, and the different services. So T of course stands for the TCP sockets, U stands for the UDP sockets, L which are the listening sockets, and N shows the numeric addresses. So this really will help us to identify services exposed to the network and really will allow us to secure and close any unnecessary ports. Really, again, this is really perfect for any security audit. And last but not least, I would also like to check the users with the super user privileges. So for that, I'm just going to run the command get tent group sudo, which will list the users in the sudo groups, which grants the, of course, super user privileges. And we would like to audit whether only the trusted users have the administrative rights in order to reduce the risk of the privilege escalation attacks. And once we already have all of these comments, now what we can do is just simply run the script, and we can see all of the informations that we have been already putting into the script are now presented. So we have firewall status, we can see that it's inactive, which is not very good. Now we also have the SSH configuration status, the packages that we have just installed, and of course of the list of the packages that are upgradable. Then we also have the list of the open ports and the list of the super users. Script number 4, service check. So this script is a lightweight service monitoring tool tailored for DevOps engineers that would like to verify whether the service that they have is operational or not. I already have the service, which is the HTML website running on the Nginx web server, and I'm going to just write a quick check whether this website is up or down, which is non-operational. Let's start with the new script, and the first step that I'm going to take is to define the variables. First variable is declared to store the URL of the service that we want to monitor. I'm just going to call it a service, and here I'm going to put exact IP and the URL of the service. I'm not using any DNS, it's just an IP. Apart from that, the second one is status code. So this one will extract the HTTP code from the response. For that, I'm going to use a command line tool used for making the HTTP request that is called curl. So I will use curl with 3 flags. The first one is -s, -o, and -w. -s means that it will run in the silent mode, suppressing the progress output. -o to really discard the body of HTTP response, because we are really interested only in the status code that will indicate whether the service is running or not. And then finally is the -w, which really extracts and prints the HTTP status code returned by the server. And then at the end we also have the variable store our URL of the service. Having that, we can write a very quick if statement, very simple one, that basically going to say that if the status code equals to 100, then that means that the service is operational, is up, and if the status code is different than 200 from the server, that means that the service is down. Okay, I think we have a small typo here, and the second option, echo the service is down, meaning it's not operational. Okay, let's just close the script and just change the permission and run it. We can see that the service is operational, which is exactly what is happening at this very moment, and the script is correct. Script number 5, partition creation. So in this case, I would like to more show of a process that you will probably encounter as a DevOps or IT engineer while you'll be working with Linux. It's a very common one, it's a very common task in your daily job. What I would like to do is to create a new partition in my Linux. For that, I'm going to use the tool called fdisk. I will run the fdisk in the sudo mode, and now I'm just selecting the specific options for our partition. So the default partition number will be 4, then I'm just pressing enter because the Linux will automatically select the sector, the first and the last sector of the cylinder, and now we can see that the new partition type was created. It's a very small partition in this specific case, and we press W in order to save the operation, and now when we run lsblk-f, we can see that the new partition 4th, was created, but in contrast to other partitions, there are no specific configuration, like there is no file system, UEID, and there is also no mount point. So in order to finish the process, we need to also configure this. We need to start with the formatting of our new partition with the file system. So to do that, I'm going to run sudo mkfs-ext4, which is one of the most common file systems in the Linux world, but of course we also have many other great file systems like FAT, XFS, B3, Minix, all the versions of the ext4 like ext2 and ext3. And now I'm just going to put the sudo mkfs-ext4, and now I'm selecting the path to our partition. So in this case, the partition that we just created, which is the partition number 4. This operation really prepares the partition to be used by the file, by this specific ext4 file system structure. Having that already, we can check in the lsblk that ext4 file system is already installed on our new partition. Now we can move on to mounting the partition. So mounting really means that making the partition accessible in the Linux file system hierarchy. So without file system, the system won't know where to access the partition. So for that, I'm just going to create a new folder that I'm just going to call build data, and this is the one that I'm going to use to mount the partition. So for that, I will type sudo mount, and now the path to our partition and the folder where we are going to, the destination place where we are going to mount it. Okay, great. The last step is also optional. If we want to make the mount persistent, we need to edit the etc/fs_tab file. In order to do so, we need to get UEID that we can get from the blkid command, and we can see that we already have the specific number that we're going to use in order to edit the fs tab. I'm just going to vi the file and make all the necessary changes. We see that we already have other partitions described here, configured. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to put the new line with the partitions that we just created. We start with the file system identifier, which is the UEID. Now is the mount point, as we can see here on the one of the top lines. So here in our case it was build data, and the type of our partition, which is the ext4, and some additional options. I don't want to dive into the details that much here, so I'm just going to put the defaults and 0, 1 for dump and pass. Now we can run a quick check, we can reboot the machine, and after the reboot we can see whether the partition still will be in our system. As we can see in the lsblk, the partition is fully configured. We had a file system UEID, we have a mount point, so everything looks fine. The only last check that we should do now is to reboot the machine to see whether the mounting was permanent. I'm just going to run the reboot. And after I have already SSH to the machine, we can rerun the lsblk, and we can see that the partition number 4 is here. And that's it for today. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe the channel. If you like this type of content, please consider subscribing. All code and the explanations are in my Medium article, and the link is in the description. Thank you very much and take care.